We're here with JoAnn Lower, a wonderful storyteller. And JoAnn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dan. Nice to be here.
Well, we're so glad to have you here. You're a great storyteller, and I understand you've got a story to tell us today. Is that true?
I do.
The Hands of the Farmer by JoAnn Lower.
My grandpa Ostrander farmed 2 miles south of Buffalo Center. But sometimes I wonder if maybe he was a writer, too. He always made his Thanksgiving blessing sound just a bit like a poem. This particular Thanksgiving, we sat around the long table, aunts, uncles, cousins, clasping hands, as Grandpa stood to say the prayer. For the sweet smell of the soft earth, for fat, ripe ears of corn, and for the hands around this table that have brought in this year's good harvest, we thank you. He glanced around the table and paused at the empty spot right there between Mom and me. And bless my firstborn son, who because of this harvest is fighting for his life today. Bring him back to us. Grandpa finished the prayer and carved the turkey in silence. As Grandma passed around that huge bowl of steamy riced potatoes with a little lake of butter in the top. Grandma's Thanksgiving table. White linen napkins, her best china, silver, crystal. And in the center of the table, a large bouquet of yellow mums. Everything looked so beautiful, but nothing felt beautiful on this day. You see, a couple of weeks before, my dad had been out picking corn. Cold, gray November day. The picker plugged again for the 3rd time that morning. Dad put the Oliver 88 into idle. He stepped down from the tractor, walked to the back of the corn picker. If he could just pull out some of those stalks, allowing the rest to go through, when the snapping rollers grabbed his right hand and swallowed his arm all the way up to his shoulder. The tractor motor killed. Pain. If only he could reach his jackknife in his back pocket, if he really wanted to cut off that pain. A couple of hours later, the neighbor helping Dad returned to the field and found him broken, bleeding, and unconscious. That's when all the craziness began. Pounding on the door, someone running in to use the phone, an ambulance siren. No one ever heard an ambulance siren in Buffalo Center, Iowa. And then they took my dad away. What did it mean, hospital? What did it mean, that word, die? I was terrified. I was terrified. I was 3 years old. My mom that morning had just told me that pretty soon I was going to have a brand new baby brother or sister, and we were so excited. We were doing a little dance in the middle of the kitchen floor. But now she couldn't stop crying. My grandpa came, and he drove Mom in his big black Buick to that hospital in Mason City. And there, at the tender age of 3, that day, I was about to learn how it is that farm families come together in time of crisis. My Aunt Marlis came. Well, little Miss JoAnn, she said, do you have a suitcase? No. Well, she said, then this paper bag will have to work. And we gathered my clothes, and she took me home with her. My Aunt Marlos is a school teacher in a one-room country school. She took me to school with her every day, and I did what every good little 3-year-old does at a country school. I graded papers and took naps on desks. She couldn't keep me forever. So my next aunt from Buffalo Center came, my Aunt Dorothy. Yes, she came to take me home with her. My Aunt Dorothy has 3 boys. I don't know anything about boys. And she made them eat their peas. Oh dear, what if she made me eat mine? Thankfully, my Aunt Dorothy couldn't keep me too long. And then came my Aunt Ines. She taught me little girl songs and little girl stories. But all I wanted was to be back home with my own mom and dad. Harvest season passed. An entire year rolled around. And there we were again at Grandpa and Grandma Ostrander's Thanksgiving table. Uncles, aunts, wiggly cousins in assorted sizes, turkeys, riced potatoes, homemade breads and jams and jellies, and plum pudding, the best thing to come out of my grandma's kitchen, her plum pudding with a buttery lemon sauce drizzled over the top. Clasping hands, Grandpa stood to say the prayer. For the sweet smell of the soft earth, for fat, ripe ears of corn, and for the hands around this table that have brought in the best harvest ever, we thank you. Grandpa looked around the long table and glanced over at me. There I was. I was 4 years old this year. What a big girl. And there sat my mom, holding my little baby brother Jimmy in her lap. And between us, yes, between us, sat my dad, still with 2 hands and 2 arms to hug me. Many Thanksgivings have come and gone since that one, but never one so filled with love and thankfulness. It's called Hands of the Farmer.
Thank you, JoAnn. A wonderful story.
Thank you.
It's almost like yesterday.
It almost is.
So we went from a trauma, a disaster, a farm safety issue, to something successful. Do you remember anything about the hospital, the doctor, some of the things that happened for maybe immediate first aid or first responders?
I wasn't there for any of that, but I was able to visit my dad one time. My grandpa Ostrander took me to the hospital, and evidently what I said was I'd go from room to room and say, "Where's my dad? Gotta find my dad." And as I walked into his room, Dad's doctor, Dr. Adams, Park Hospital, Mason City, was there. Tall man, white, very white, I thought everything was. Little mustache, smoking his pipe, something probably doctors don't do now. He picked me up and he said, "Well, little Miss Ostrander, you need to see that your dad is going to be just fine." I thought Dr. Adams was probably next to God. He saved my dad's life.
Was Dad able to use that arm in his farm operation?
He was.
Wow, what a miracle.
He was. The hand was shaped a bit like this. Couldn't open it further than that. He never complained about it. He built hog houses and did all kinds of remodeling on the barn and the house and everything. And I know that it must have ached, but he never complained.
JoAnn, thank you so much for joining us on Farm Connections
Thank you, Dan.
and telling us a great story.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more Farm Connections coming up next.